It's a pleasure to be here back, it's I cannot have words to describe how great the event is. Thank you to you, Sydney and Caroline. It's a power of learning knowledge every year, and I cannot get enough of it, really. I was thinking yesterday what you said, connecting people with knowledge sharing and with courage, and it's really a vibe. If you want to put it in a one word, it's probably knowledge vibe, which is happening here every year. And your conclusion there, I think it was, without even asking it, a perfect introduction, because I'm not going to talk about technology. Technology, I believe, from my experience, that it can solve. I mean, we have enough of technology to do whatever we want. If you have the people to employ it, if you have the processes in your organization to allow it, and for AI, it's important to have the data. Then you can definitely do almost everything you want to do. So I would rather talk about your conclusion about how to apply that in the organization and what would be the benefits you can get as a business or a citizen, how we can do more efficient processes, how we can serve the clients, the users, businesses out there. So in a nutshell, I know you're thinking about European Union. Whenever you hear anything, you think of Brussels. Well, we are based in Luxembourg, and I urge you to visit next time. If you love Edinburgh, you will love Luxembourg. It's the same mix of medieval castles, wonderful history, and forward-looking technology, forward-looking people and organizations. So the office, we don't necessarily do policy, but we support all the European Union policies. We are a hub of data and knowledge, the trustable publisher of the European Union, at the service of all the European institutions, citizens, and businesses. And very concretely, we cover a very wide area of content. We are, first of all, the ones publishing the law. The law is not official until it's published on our website. Eurlex, Publication Office Portal. We have Cordis for research results. We have Who for the Director of the European Union. You maybe are already going regularly on TED, which is the public procurement of the European Union, and the European Data Portal, where we will find all the data sets of 35 European countries. Actually, it goes beyond the countries in EU per se, and of course of European institutions. Roughly as a size, we talk about over 1 million EU publications in 24 languages, 250,000 publications, general publications, reference data, 64,000 EU staff, and 13,000 entities, 1 million procurements per year, and roughly 3,000 per day in 24 languages, and almost 2 million data sets across Europe. So there is a certain size, and especially multilingual is at the core of what we do overall, over 80 languages where this content is published. Roughly at the global level, it's something we can hardly ignore. It's over 1.5 billion in terms of impressions in Google yearly. So findability matters a lot for us and in all these languages. So this being the basis and the core of the trustable content we publish, obviously the very first action we did to embrace AI was to actually structure the whole data to be usable by AI. And everything I mentioned is actually exposed to you, to any business, to any citizens, in a semantic engine and a knowledge graph, a huge knowledge graph, which exposes all the relations, all the data, and the metadata that I mentioned, which is available on a completely free and public and open API, Sparkle API to tap into the knowledge graph, and a REST API to reuse the content and data sets. So that is where you will find the EU law, EU publications, EU procurement, EU WHOIS, and the reference data. And to be consequent and consistent with ourselves, our applications are tapping into the same way as you would do it today or tomorrow. through the same API. So this is how the publication office portal or URLEX is working, or AI assistants. Now, what do we talk when we talk about publications? Is it can be everything, right? But very concretely for us, it's kind of a tree. You have a title, you have Harry Potter, but you have Harry Potter edition 2026, which is in English, which is in French, which is in Arabic, which is in Polish, which is in paper. It can be on a on audiobook, it can be in a PDF, it can be in XML, and so on and so forth. Multitude of languages, multitude of editions, multitude of formats. And for all these, we keep basically a tree in the knowledge graph and relations in between all this content. And all that can be reused. At the core of it, we have actually the reference data. So all the metadata describing, like in any library that you have in the world, the descriptions of the book you're looking for, that reference metadata allows this interoperability and understanding, making sense of the same thing, understanding the same concepts between ourselves and between systems. Just imagine that we would store, or you would like the publication that we would like to reuse, and we would have different ways the author is registered, or the countries, or the names of the institutions, or the concept when you're tagging those publications. So authority lists, the taxonomies, thesaurus, ontologies, models are a critical part of this data, and we try to structure the data that we have in such a way that it makes as easy as possible and as coherent as possible the reuse of this data in any environment. You have all these capabilities on one of our sites, which is called EU Vocabularies, and that's why I put a QR code there that can yourself reuse this reference data, these thesaurus and ontologies. So if we don't call the same thing ourselves the same way, how do we expect actually machines will do it for us? It's probably one critical that we are consistent with ourselves before actually asking agents or machines to do miracles for us. And that's why we invest quite a lot into, quite a lot of efforts into being able to have coherent reference data and to reuse this across Europe. Now, my colleagues, some of my colleagues are actually in charge of tagging these publications and reusing this reference data in order to properly store the data and make it interoperable and reuse. So they build, that's a very concrete example of how the process into improving their data and their own work in becoming more productive is with an AI-based classification tool, which was built in order to tag and properly assign the reference data and concepts to the publications. Now, what's in it for you immediately? Well, we have a huge and a vast amount of data sets which enable your model to be trained, which eventually enables to benchmark in between different models, different terminologies. You can take, let's say, the space data set related publication or space data set related law. By the way, I saw that some people yesterday wanted to put 1 million satellites in space for AI. Maybe we do it first on Earth. And you can build your own domain-specific language models by reusing parts of the data we expose freely and openly. So that's something you can use directly. Now, with the vast amount of data that we have and with the wide intentions, business needs, and users that we serve, obviously, I would say obviously, we went into starting conversations with the user in order to ease the findability and to help users to find what they are interested before tapping probably into APIs and into the databases. So we opened this experience and we learned since then, and we try to improve. That's what Christophe was saying, and thank you for your previous help, to improve that experience. No need to argue why that is the most important into the project, and find those publications, law, or people in a seamless way. Today we just cover English, French, and Spanish, but it's all across EU law, EU publications, and people. And this made us getting experiencely slowly with what does it mean as a customer experience or user experience in conversation, way beyond search, which was, and it still remains, at the core of our activities. And we learned a lot. We learned that it's probably not anymore the top priority to be in the first 3, 7, 5 results, but what it matters more and more is to be the answer and to be in the sources of that answers. So it is very, very much important for us to make this data conversational, not only our services, but the data itself. To expand our user coverage, people started to ask in the user in the bot, in the assistant, all sorts of things which go beyond EU law and EU publications. So we can welcome them with the best welcome message in the world and tell what are the limits, but usually users' question expand way beyond what us as publications office have as content. And then I cannot go from a liability perspective and answer and provide answers to things which I'm not covering as a public institution. We also have the intention, and policies are there for all businesses and all citizens, so it's very important to be reachable from any place, from there where the users are. Or if we don't do anything and we expect that everybody comes on our website or on our applications, we can hardly achieve that goal. And last but not least, generating accurate answers on that size of content, it's very difficult. So very shortly, we went into testing 3 different proof of concepts. One with the chatbot interoperability. So if somebody's asking questions that we cannot answer, we can rely with a trusted source outside of our area of expertise, being another public institution, for instance, that we can provide trustable answers through consumer assistance. So being there where the users are, if you're in the car or if you're when you're in the living room, you can ask something about your travel rights or about anything else which relates to European Union, and we should provide you the answer, and obviously provide summarized answers. And there we have, I hope it works. Yeah, it works. That's the example of the interoperability and the challenge actually to remain as a user experience into the same conversation and providing answers from something that you do not cover. We actually do this for 100 years since we invented the telephone. If you phone a company or your telecom provider and you have a problem, you probably end up talking to 2, 3 persons from 2, 3 different departments, but you're still in the same conversation, right? Well, with the chatbots, it's not as easy to realize that, especially from a user experience perspective. So we wanted people, to ask the question, to remain the same bot, and get an answer from a trusted source, which can be another administration. For instance, jobs. We are not in charge of the jobs. That's another entity in the European Union called EPSO. And if people are asking about the jobs in Belgium, there is an authority in Belgium regulating jobs in the public institution. So we would actually ask the user if he agrees to have his question sent to that entity. We shoot the question in the background, get the answer, and propose it to the user. But all that in a respectful way, in a coherent way, from a design perspective, from a trustability and transparency perspective. That's why you see another background, for instance. Another test was how can we be close toward the user? So we tried to integrate with consumer assistants, and it came out that Alexa is able to do this more than other consumer assistants for us. and we integrated with them. And 2 lessons learned, which I think nobody touched this year, but I remember some session next year. Today, still with voice, well, a lot of challenges, but in noisy environments, that's a very big problem still today. Second, it's all we talk about one-to-one conversations, but the human conversations are one-to-many or many-to-many very, very often. And this is hardly taken into account. And we also learned it the hard way when I, for instance, demoed the application in an event in a noisy environment. And of course, I will skip for the time the movie for that, but going to full rag on all this content that we have for legislation, which is very much a deterministic type of content. There are a lot of challenges, and it's not very easy. We applied it also at the public procurement, and we try to tag all the AI-generated content so that it's completely visible for people, and increased findability with annotations provided from the machines, from the models, instead of completing the human approach. Cordis is probably it is the primary source of information for research projects in Europe. So, outcome of the R&D budget in Europe, you find the results of the Cordis of the research projects on Cordis, and up to now there is the projects are classified with using EuroSciVoc terminology classification. But the algorithm behind was based on keywords. Now it's going to be changed to use LLMs, and it's at least a 2 to 3 times improvement in terms of accuracy. One of the last examples is about European Data Portal. As I mentioned before, you find almost 2 million data sets from all governments and all European institutions that you can fully use openly. And every year, Publication Office is doing a survey, an open data maturity across these countries, 35 over 1,000 pages of this report, which allow you to understand the maturity in terms of data, processes, governance in all these countries. But as I say, it's a lot of pages and difficult. It's a gold mine, but very difficult to get into it. So actually what we propose, and we even ask you to participate in this test, is to be able to have a conversation interface to ask questions across all countries, or ask specific questions for a country and understand, for instance, what is the Hungary and France top 5 data categories, or how did the open data usage in Italy impacted education. If you scan that QR code, you can actually actively provide feedback and be part of that feedback. So it's a goldmine for understanding. And to conclude, actually, we can put up and come up with any project, but if we don't measure and if we don't understand what users are doing, it's probably difficult to evaluate if we have an impact or if it's efficient, right? That is where AI can help us as well a lot, and that's where we started to actually try to understand and adapt to measure impact in conversation, and not the same way you do it on a search. To understand using AI by clustering users and behaviors of the websites. And as we have an important footprint on the internet, we need really to consider what is happening in the user experience on the internet in order to be in the relevant answer as a source. And the graph below, it talks, I think, along is the real data that we see on our websites with the traffic coming from the AI assistants as referrals. So you can see what happened in the last 1.5 years, no surprise. Last but not least, and that's again, freely available to anybody, all SMEs in Europe and all citizens, provided by European Commission, a load of open services using AI to summarize, to e-translate, to create a report, to create accessible text, and all that. You have the QR code, is simply accessible if you register with your login to any SME or citizen in Europe, including speech-to-text and multilingual posts. So, AI-based multilingual services from the European Commission. Thank you very, very much, and I remain at your disposal to connect all this day, and please reuse the data we provide for you. Thank you.